Hello, everyone, and welcome to Weather You. I'm your host, Kelly Thrower, a fellow student exploring the many academic pathways in atmospheric sciences right alongside you. Whether you're a high school student just starting your journey, a current student planning your next step, or a faculty member looking to showcase your program, Weather You is here to help you navigate the process. Each episode, we'll visit different universities, talk with students, faculty, and professionals, and get candid about what it's really like to study the atmosphere, from research labs and fieldwork to the realities of coursework. We'll answer the questions you're really wondering about. Does failing a math class hurt your chances? How can you stand out as an applicant? And yes, do you really have to code? So grab your coffee, open that course catalog, and let's dig into the world of academic opportunities in atmospheric sciences. Hey everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Weather You. I'm your host, Kelly Thrower, a senior at the University of North Dakota and a student member on the Board of Higher Education. The Board of Higher Education has put work into starting and continuing this podcast, and today we have the head of the board, Dr. Zachary Handlos, joining us. Today we discuss his journey through education all the way to his current position at GIT. We also discuss his teaching and research and ask for advice for students who want to follow in his footsteps. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. Welcome on, Dr. Handlos.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. Great to be here.
So to start off this episode today, we're going to go into your background and inspiration for your field. So the first thing I'd like to ask is, what first sparked your interest in atmospheric sciences?
I feel like my story is a lot like other people and colleagues in our field, in that I was one of those kids that just liked weather a lot growing up, and I still remember when my parents first got cable TV. So I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, and so before we had streaming and all that fancy stuff, it was just regular TV, like antenna TV and cable TV. And when they got cable TV, one of the channels that came with it was the Weather Channel. And I was like, what is this channel? And it was just fascinating to me that it's a channel that literally all they did was talk about the weather 24/7 with, every 10 minutes they would do the local on the 8s updates and stuff like that. And I think what particularly got me excited was that on that channel, they would talk a lot during the fall season, end of summer, early fall, about hurricanes. And being someone who grew up in Wisconsin, we never had hurricanes. And so I was like, wow, this is really interesting. Like, this is a type of weather that I may never experience, or at least I thought at the time. So, and then along the way, I think I just, read a lot of weather books, was kind of thinking about all the time, like to pretend on my parents' desktop computer to do my own like little weather forecasts, like what I would see on TV here on the Weather Channel. And the funny thing is that when I got to college, like I still liked weather a lot, but I actually started off with interest in math and education. That was motivated by the fact that my mom was a kindergarten teacher for her career, and I thought teaching would be a really cool career. And math, there's always a need for math education related jobs. But along the way, I'd say about halfway through my undergrad, I took some more upper level math classes. And math is always a pretty challenging subject. But when I got to like the abstract stuff, like beyond calculus and differential equations, I just kind of got lost with the material. I wasn't as interested. Luckily, where I went to school, University of Wisconsin-Madison, had an atmospheric and oceanic sciences program. And I decided I should just take some classes in this. Like, I liked this when I was a kid. Maybe I'll like the classes. And honestly, the rest was history. After that, I got sucked in pretty quick. The material was exciting. I liked the applied math. And the rest from there on was history, and it got me hooked in this way into my career.
Was there a particular storm, weather event, or experience that influenced your career path?
Yeah, and it's one that's not, I would say, like historically known, by other meteorologists, fanatics in the U.S., but it was I think it was May 12th, 2000, if I'm getting the date correct. And so I grew up in northeastern Wisconsin in Manitowoc County, and we grew up right by Lake Michigan. And Lake Michigan, because the lake is relatively cool in the summer or spring and summer compared to the air masses that would get advected into that region, a lot of times when storms would kind of get close to the area, they would kind of fizzle out a little bit. So a lot of the severe weather that would happen in Wisconsin would happen kind of more inland. But on that particular day, and this was actually in the middle of the morning, there was kind of this rogue supercell that developed. And it's very rare to even have supercells during a warm afternoon in the spring where all the ingredients are there in that part of the state. But there was this one supercell, and it ended up dropping hail, probably the size, maybe baseball size. I think it was estimated around 2 inches or so, maybe a little larger in some spots. But then there was also what was thought to be a tornado that hit a really small town south of the city of Manitowoc. And there's actually a debate at the time if it was truly a tornado or if it was a microburst. because the winds that were estimated based on damage surveys were, I think, around like 90 to 100 miles an hour. And so, sure, it could be like an EF1 type of tornado, or I think it was still F1 at the time back then, before they changed to the EF scale. But it was also hard to tell because no one had any evidence that of a tornado on the ground, no video, no photos or anything like that, just the damage and surveys. So I'm not sure if that's ever been answered, to be honest. But that being something that hit home when I was in the middle of the school day and hearing the hail hitting our building at the elementary school is that for me like really stuck very strongly. And then all the conversation after that. So that one really got me sucked in for good.
Who was your biggest mentors or role models when you were a student?
That's a great question. I mean, it depends on what phase I was in terms of being a student. I'd say like K through 12, I had some really amazing teachers in high school. I just had really great faculty that I got to work with in the Department of Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences at UW-Madison, and I had some really great mentors along the way. Certainly, at the end of my time there, I was at Madison for 10 years. So I did my undergrad there for 4 years, and then I did grad school, MS, and PhD the last 6 years I was there. And the last mentor I had, Dr. Jonathan Martin, who some of you out there, if you've taken dynamics, maybe you've seen the purple textbook, the mid-latitude atmospheric dynamics book. I think that's what it's called. And I was fortunate enough to work with him in his lab group for my PhD. And he was just a really fantastic person who always had great advice, was really patient with me, and would help me through sort of the tougher times that come with grad school when you hit, some coding challenges, the challenges that come with things like taking a qualifying exam where there's the written part or the oral part, just getting through like, tricky or interesting life decisions. So, and there's a lot of other people I could probably go on forever talking, but I'll leave it at that in the interest of time.
So, is there any point in your journey that you thought you wouldn't do academia?
Yeah. So when I when I was in grad school, I started off just doing an MS degree and then eventually PhD. I thought at the time, like, oh, I definitely want to do, but like get the MS degree, stick around for a PhD. But I really struggled with the transition from the MS to the PhD for two reasons. One, I think a lot of my ability to get through academia, like K through 12 and in college, was kind of being able to figure out like the algorithms to solving problems, doing well on tests. I was someone who did pretty well on tests, but the reality is that when you get to grad school, it's a lot more like the real world. You're doing more job related experience. When you're doing research, you don't take a test to prove whether you know stuff or not. You have to be able to solve problems. And that was something I actually really struggled with. And so I think it was good in grad school to kind of get kicked around a little bit, but there were some points where I was like, maybe I can't do this. Like I kind of didn't have the confidence completely at first. And the real tough point for me was that when I was a student, you would have to take, there was kind of two phases to the qualifying exam as a grad student. One was a written portion, and then one was an oral portion you do later on once you pass the written portion. And the first time I took the written exam, I failed it with flying colors. I did not do well at all. And to the point where I was kind of informed, maybe this is not the right path for you. And for me, that was kind of like, okay, maybe this is not, like maybe I can finish out with an MS degree and it's okay. Maybe I'll go back and consider like K through 12 teaching because I really love teaching, or find something else to do. But actually, my PhD advisor, Dr. Jonathan Martin, was the one he actually came to my grad office a day or two after I found out I didn't do so well on the qualifying exam, and just kind of talked to me and encouraged me to give it another shot. We were allowed to have two chances or two tries on the qualifying exam. And it was enough for me to, after kind of thinking about it, to say, oh, let me just give it one more shot. And the second time it went much better. I learned how to learn better and focus more on the why and how things work versus just try to know, keywords and facts and things like that. And I think that change in trying to understand how to learn the material and what's really important for grad school and career related work. I think that pivot helped me gain some confidence, did better on the exam, and then was able to move forward and finish the PhD program.
That's great. So, changing now to your career journey, could you walk me through your career from your first weather related job to your role here?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've pretty much been in academia my whole professional life because I did, again, 10 years, bachelor's, master's, PhD, all at University of Wisconsin-Madison. And once I finished that, my first job per se was working as a visiting assistant professor at Northern Illinois University in DeKalb, Illinois. And I was just there for 9 months. It was a really great experience. I met some really outstanding colleagues there and grad students. But after that, it was a short-term position. So I was kind of on the road again looking for the next opportunity. And I'll be honest, the job I got at Georgia Tech, I feel very lucky that I got it because at the time I was applying for a lot of academic jobs, mostly tenure track related jobs. And I had a few interviews and I felt like I was getting close to maybe getting something, but I was never the final candidate. Someone else always kind of had the edge. And even at Northern Illinois University, I applied. They had a tenure track opportunity there. And again, I was a finalist, but things just didn't work out. I wasn't, the person that was chosen for that position. And with the Georgia Tech position, the interview came really late in the academic year after I'd done a lot of other interviews. And I kind of thought, well, probably by that point, hopefully I'm very optimistic. I thought by that point, maybe something else will have worked out and maybe I won't even need to have this interview. But when I eventually came here to interview, I was still looking for a job. And when I came here, I still remember it was such a positive experience. Actually, now that I think about it, it was funny. At first, my interview here got canceled, not for anything I did, but because of a high risk of severe weather in Atlanta. So they said you have to wait a week to come fly in. And I was like, okay, hopefully it's not a bad omen or bad luck or something like that. But the next week I came, met lots of people here, had to give a teaching demonstration, and just really enjoyed the people I met here, the campus experience. I never really spent time in Atlanta before outside of the AMS conference downtown at the World Congress Center, and just really enjoyed the experience and ended up getting the offer and taking the job. And again, the rest is history. It's been a really awesome experience, A+ experience here in the 8 years I've been here.
So, what was the most challenging step in your academic or professional journey?
I think getting through grad school is hard. I always encourage students to consider it if they really like atmospheric science related research, or they think they want to work in an academic setting or a public sector setting, or even there are some private sector jobs now where they're looking for PhDs to lead labs and do some really interesting work. But grad school, as rewarding as it can be to really enrich your mind and be put to the test in terms of research, teaching, and service, it can be very stressful too. Again, there's, colleges and universities have these qualifying exams or preliminary exams or whatever you want to call it, depending on where you're at. And that can be a very stressful experience. You work long hours, sometimes nights, weekends for long periods of time trying to spit up research. Funding can be up or down depending on, what the funding landscape is. And so there's a lot of stressors that are placed on grad students. And so it can be really challenging. But I will say, now that I've been on the other side for a while, that when you're in a professional position in academia, at least, that in a way it's kind of good to go through some of that because you'll actually end up being, maybe grad students don't want to hear this, but you'll actually end up being busier when you're in your professional career than you are as a grad school student, even though you feel like your life is constantly busy. The good news is that hopefully you're making more money, so that feels a little better, but it does prepare you for the workload that does come with kind of a lifestyle in academia or in research.
Have you worked in the field outside of teaching and research, like operational forecast or consulting?
I have not really. I've been, again, in academia pretty much my whole professional career. I've had experiences outside of the academic setting where I've done some outreach events at schools. One time we did one at a pub in Atlanta to try to get people aware of some cool science content. I've also done some things like media interviews too. And in terms of like consulting, operational forecasting, I've had some opportunities to connect with people at the local National Weather Service office here in Peachtree City, Georgia. On the private sector side, I've made some connections with Delta Airlines, CNN, the Weather Company, the Weather Channel, some of our local kind of go-to spots for students looking for meteorology careers in the area. I haven't worked for them, so it's not like any of them have paid me salary, but just more collaboration. So, but to be honest, I've pretty much been a lifer in academia up to this point in my career.
How did your graduate school or early research experiences shape your career?
For me, I just love being at a college or a university. I love that you're just surrounded by some of the smartest people you'll ever meet. And I always like working with people that are smarter than me. I always like to learn from people who know more than I do, who know some research techniques or statistical techniques, things like that, who can teach me from their years of experience, like how to think about research and, like what are important theories, applications, things like that. And also just being able to do research, it's such a different experience than when you're an undergrad and you're just taking classes and exams and doing projects. And anyone who listens to this, I would encourage you, if you're an undergraduate student, any way you can get involved with research as an undergraduate student, even if it's just for a semester or something that's like a research experience, it's a great way to learn more about what you might be doing in the real world because the real world is not just studying and taking exams. It's actually like coding up stuff. It's making maps. It's communicating this information to the public or to your colleagues. It's going to conferences, meetings, shows, doing media interviews. That's the stuff that you may not do inside the classroom, but is equally, if not more valuable than what you learn within the classroom experience. So certainly got me excited, despite some of the stressors. It got me excited about being in academia and staying at a large university and continuing to be part of an environment that fosters outstanding research, teaching, and service.
So, going now into your research and passion projects, what's the research project that you're most proud of in your career?
Yeah, I've have kind of two chapters of life to the research I've been able to do in grad school and kind of early in my career. That was working more on the hard science research side, doing some more. When I was an MS student, I worked on some tropical meteorology research, but I probably spent more time during my PhD doing more mid latitude synoptic meteorology type of research. And I'll be honest, I think I'm still most proud of the dissertation I finished, just because even if the dissertation is filed in the library somewhere at UW Madison, and only a few people read it between now and the end of time. I think just the amount of work that goes into the start to finish of completing a dissertation, it's just something I feel proud that I was able to complete all those steps and get through that process. I'm also proud, though, of some more of the recent research I've been participating in with colleagues that are part of the atmospheric science education research community. So my current job, I'm a non-tenured faculty member at Georgia Tech, and so I don't really do hard science research anymore outside of maybe once in a while co-mentoring undergraduate students who are involved in that research. I spend more time teaching a couple classes a semester, sometimes during the summer, and I've been able to collect data on some of the teaching I've been doing and try out some different teaching techniques, kind of dive into the scholarship of teaching and learning a little bit. And so I'm pretty proud of the progress I've been able to make with connecting with colleagues there and also actually getting a couple publications out either as a co-author or first author related to some of the atmospheric science education related work that I've been up to. So I think I'm proud of both of those accomplishments. Certainly the hard science one is getting through grad school and getting to the finish line because it's always a journey. And then recently I'm excited about some of the science education stuff I've been doing in the community that we've been building throughout the atmospheric sciences.
So, through either that experience or others whenever you were a graduate student, have you ever had a study or experiment that left you surprised with its results?
Nothing major, to be honest, which I know is not a very thrilling answer. I think the only time there were surprises is when I coded something wrong and surprised myself with, "Hey, this doesn't look right." But usually there was a reason, and it was on the user end for something not working well the first time. So I think the research that I've been able to do up to this point in my career, a lot of times has been kind of validating something that's been known for decades, but just coming at it from a different perspective. And while that may not be like the most thrilling, Nobel Prize winning sounding research, it's a good reminder that sometimes it's okay in science just to do something that kind of validates and strengthens the foundational knowledge of what we already know. Because you can't just have one paper say, here's a theory, here's how we explored it, here are the results. You want to make sure you have several studies that can confirm the same thing from different angles or perspectives. And I feel like my research has been able to contribute to that in a positive way, both on the hard science side of things, but also on the science education research side of things.
What's a topic in atmospheric sciences you could talk about for hours without getting bored?
That's a good question. Honestly, the short answer is anything. But if I had to choose just to pick something, I love talking about severe weather and winter weather, either of those categories. And it really depends on the season. So, like right now, it's the summer going into the fall. So, right now, my mind is thinking, especially after living here in Atlanta for 8+ years, thinking about tropical cyclones. Like, what's gonna be like when we hit peak Atlantic hurricane season? But when it gets to the winter, I always revert back to what's going on back home up in the upper Midwest. Where are there any good winter storms, blizzards going on, et cetera? That's one thing I do miss about living here is I love talking about a good winter storm. I miss experiencing them. I know they can be an inconvenience when it comes to travel and everyday life, but it's a spectacular experience to be a part of, and that's something that we don't get here as much. So, and then the springtime, it's severe weather season. So, what's going on with the dry line out in the central U.S. Here in the southeast U.S., we get these nighttime QLCS events where we get strong low level jet and you can spin up some nighttime tornadoes. And what is that all about? The dynamics of those are always very interesting. So with each season, changes the conversation. What's the most interesting thing to think about and what are on people's minds at that time?
So, if you had unlimited funding and time, what research question would you tackle?
I don't know if I can think of a specific research question, but I really have enjoyed the time I've spent doing atmospheric science education research. I think hard science research, of course, is very important. We have a lot of people out there in our community doing absolutely amazing things. But I think just given my love of teaching and how important it is to make sure that we're educating the next generation of students as effectively as possible and preparing them for the challenges that lie ahead in our field. I think anything that focuses on helping students better understand material, getting excited about that, preparing them for real world experiences in the private, public, and academic sectors. I think to me, that's the thing that I want to spend my professional career focusing on moving forward in the future. Again, if there's if there's a hard science research opportunity out there, if it's related to some of my previous interests, I'd love to be a part of that as well too, to kind of keep fresh and stay in the conversation. But to me, the most important thing is being able to communicate our scientific information and educate people as effectively as possible. I think that's the thing that I would hope to primarily focus on moving forward the rest of my career.
Speaking of teaching, we're going to now go into your teaching and mentorship. So, what do you enjoy most about working with students?
Students are the students are intelligent, they're full of energy, and working one thing I love about undergraduate teaching is that for a lot of students, it's the first time they're kind of detached from their families. They're feeling that first bout of independence as a young adult or early adult, and they just want to learn about the world. And what's cool about meteorology and the atmospheric sciences is that most students don't really take classes about that in K through 12 education outside of like a little bit of earth science and environmental science here and there, maybe. And so I think for a lot of students, like it's cool for them to take classes in our field because it's the first time they've taken a formal class on it and being exposed to this information. And students ask such amazing questions. They always find ways to tie current events into what's going on. And they just want to get excited about something and feel empowered and become successful as they grow older. And having that energy, I've been teaching for years. I've had lots of opportunities at TA as a grad student. I've taught a dozen plus courses here at Georgia Tech of all sizes, ranging from as small as 3 or 4 students to as large as 280 something students. It never gets old. Even when I'm burned out at the end of the semester, after a week or two, I miss it. I want to go back and just work with the students again and help them learn and get excited about the material. So I think just the energy, the excitement, the curiosity, those things in combination just will always make teaching, I think, indefinitely enjoyable for me.
What's your favorite class that you ever taught?
I still like teaching synoptic meteorology. It's an upper level, like junior, senior class. It's just in the wheelhouse of things that I know and love from undergrad, grad school, and beyond. Um, it's also fun to, at least the version here, we have pretty small class sizes, so we can do more project based work, just really look at maps, do weather discussion projects, things like that. I will say though that I've grown to actually enjoy teaching some of our large lecture classes too. So right now this semester, I'm teaching. We have an intro to environmental science class. I think we have 284 students or something like that. And while it can be quite intimidating to be in front of a huge auditorium full of students, they ask a lot of great questions and bring a lot of energy. And it's a lot of students who are not in the major that they just want to learn something interesting about our field. And it's a different type of challenge teaching material to students who aren't going to major in this versus something like a synoptic class where everyone's majoring and they're trying to do this for a career. But you have different conversations, and sometimes you get people excited and switch over to your field. That's exciting to see that journey too. So, but I think at the end of the day, like an upper level weather class, like synoptic meteorology, something like that, will always be top to me, just because historically that's what I've always loved to talk about.
Have you had a student who really left a lasting impression on you?
I've had a lot, to be honest. And I think the ones that stick with me are those who have maybe a unique life journey. So I've met at least one student who went through our program, and the first time I actually met them was when we had a high school weather camp years ago, and they were one of a few participants that did the camp, and then one day they just ended up in our department, and now they're a grad student doing some really amazing research. And it was just cool to see that, like, hey, this camp that we did, which most of the time you don't see these kids again, they went to this camp, something changed, in their mind that, hey, I should pursue this. And now they're really successful post undergraduate education. But I also, one of the most rewarding things about being an educator to me is when you talk with former students when they've graduated and they tell you all about their career and they're so excited and they're successful and they talk about, if they say something nice or something like that about class from the past. To me, those are some of the most rewarding conversations I've had in my career. It's always fun to see people after the fact be successful and happy and thriving in those roles. And there's a few students locally here that are in the Atlanta area that I still check in with that will sometimes come back for alumni events. I love going to the AMS conference and running into former students, and it's such a joy when people come out of their way to say hi. Because sometimes you don't know how impactful your teaching is, and maybe for some it's not as impactful as others. But when you have those conversations where people, say kind things, it's very rewarding.
What's one lesson you hope all of your students take away from your class, even if they don't become scientists?
That's a great question. I think the most important lesson is to always maintain that curiosity. Like, never be afraid to ask questions. It's always okay to learn above and beyond a class. And also to remember too that how you perform in class doesn't necessarily reflect how you're going to perform in the real world. If you have a drive to understand something, even if you have, a rough test or two or a rough grade in a class or two, if you really have a drive to want to be part of a career, keep chasing that passion, keep finding ways to stay connected within that network, meet people. Some of the most successful students that I've worked with that have graduated from our program, they weren't necessarily the ones with the highest GPAs. They were ones who were really proactive in reaching out to people. When they had tough times, they would keep asking questions and try to learn from mistakes. And and from that, I think they overcame that adversity and became stronger employees and more successful in their careers as a result, because they're willing just to kind of keep powering through, and because they had that drive, no matter what, they're going to find a way to stay connected in that field as much as possible. And the reality is that I think people in our field are so kind, and when they meet other people who want to be involved in the atmospheric sciences and meteorology, they want to help you find a way to succeed because someone helped them at some point in their career find a way to succeed as well too. And I think one thing we do really well in our field is we do a great job of paying it forward to the next generation of students. And so that's something that I try to emphasize with students, like stay connected, always ask questions and stay curious. And I think you'll go pretty far.
What's something that's changed your perspective on teaching since you began as a teacher to now?
I think the most important thing about teaching is trying to help put students in a place where they're the ones taking the lead on the learning process. So when I was in college, and I think this is still true for a decent number of college classes, even in 2025, some people just, when they teach a class, they lecture a lot, and it can be really interesting material, but they lecture, you go home, you see how much you cram in your head, and you come back and take a test or quiz, maybe do a project. But I think students' greatest memories of a class they've taken in the past are ones where they're very hands-on. They've been part of the process through asking a lot of questions, participating in class, even if it's something as simple as doing practice problems as a group together, or something as complicated as flipping a classroom where students watch videos before class and then they do projects during the class, or they do some sort of research project or something like that. That's the stuff that sticks with you. Even if those are the harder classes, just something that's more hands-on, student-led. Students create their own products, results, papers. That's something that's tangible. They've created that themselves. They took the lead. That's something that's going to stick with them and they're going to feel proud about, versus just trying to survive a class where someone just lectures to you over and over and you just take tests and kind of go home. So being able to empower students by letting them take the lead on the learning is really important. It's something that I've learned a lot as an instructor over the years.
Going now into your personal reflections. So, in your opinion, what's a misconception people have about being a meteorologist?
I think there's still that classic misconception of that all we do is like go on TV or on the internet and talk about weather. And there's plenty of people who do that and do an amazing job with that. Don't get me wrong. But there's so much more to being a meteorologist. And this is something that this is a misconception with a lot of our undergraduate students. For example, a lot of our students come here thinking like, oh, I'm going to go work for the National Weather Service, so I'm going to go on TV. And that's fine. You can still do that. But you could also have a meteorology background and go work for an insurance company. You can work for a logistics company or do logistics for someone like Amazon. You can work for an airline company and do forecasting. You could go into consulting. You could work with an energy company. There's all these opportunities where people are looking for meteorologists, even if your job title isn't being a meteorologist. And I think helping people become more aware that meteorologists provide value in all sorts of sectors and different career positions is really important for us to emphasize in the classroom, but also as a community, especially moving forward, given a lot of the changes that have happened in terms of job prospects in the various sectors in our field.
Do you have a favorite type of weather, either to study or experience?
I I think it's still a tie for me between just like good old fashioned mid latitude severe weather, like having a shelf cloud blow through or a severe weather outbreak, and just experiencing like the lightning, sometimes the hail. I've never seen a tornado, but even being like within the vicinity of a tornado warning still gets my emotions all fired up. Some of it's excitement, some of it's a little bit of fear because I don't want to necessarily be exactly located where the tornado is going if it is on the ground. But then I think I still miss winter storms, like classic mid latitude synoptic cyclone winter storms in the upper Midwest, and just seeing like a fresh blanket of like a foot of snow and the winds that come with it, and then the cold front blasts through. It gets nice and icy and Arctic after that. I think I miss that from time to time. And again, we don't really get that in Atlanta. When we have snowstorms here, it's an inch or two. And that's enough to shut things down. Maybe people have heard those stories before, but it's true. But it's not the same as, several inches of snow and being able to, you know, go outside, walk through it, things like that.
This is a completely random question, but in North Dakota, it gets really, really, really windy because we don't have any trees, and we have our freshmen get blown over because it's their first time wearing big winter coats and backpacks. Do you guys have that at UW-Madison?
We did not, but I do remember when I was in grad school, we had a snowstorm with about 18 inches of snow, and people were making all sorts of, snow designs, I will say, with the snow. And I remember one person was cross country skiing down the street to get somewhere. Cars were blocked all over the place. And the other thing, too, is that students, this was in December of 2012. I think it was December 20th, 2012. And there were some students who hadn't taken their fall semester finals yet, including those who were about to graduate. They had to come back in the spring during the early spring semester, even if they had graduated, to finish the final and kind of finish the grade on their transcript. So I think your story is more friendly and better versus ours, which is a little bit more of a serious situation.
We had a finals week blizzard my freshman year, fall semester, and they ended up just either making us do them online or just canceling them in general.
Wow.
But that was definitely an experience for my first semester in college. But luckily, I ended up flying out before everybody else got stuck in Grand Forks because most of my finals were online already.
That's good.
But
Yeah, we don't get the blizzards like you all do out in the Dakotas because we have a little bit more vegetation and terrain elevation change. So
yeah, we just have wind. How do you balance research, teaching, and your own life outside of work?
yeah, so this is something that I kind of struggled with when I was in grad school. I got really invested heavily in the research I was doing in TAing, and I probably spent way more time doing the work side of things than the rest of life side of the balance. But that certainly changed in the last few years when my wife and I introduced two kids into our family. And I very much value the time I spend with her and the two kids, and I want to make sure that I can be a father to them and around frequently for all their life events. And so I think like that big life change for me helped me figure out how to balance, what do I absolutely need to get done at work every day, every week during a semester? And what are some things that I can work on but don't need to prioritize necessarily? And that way I have enough time to go home, pick up the kids from school, spend time with family. And it also opens doors just to spend more time with friends or family when they visit the area as well too. And I know it's hard to sometimes get that balance, and especially when you're in grad school. I think for a lot of grad students, you're so overwhelmed with the research demand at first. Maybe you're TAing at the same time. But one piece of advice, I can't remember who told me this at some point in my life, probably one of my parents or something like that. But you have the rest of your life to work. And what I mean by that is like don't not do work. Like you still have to do something to make sure you get through your program or get paid, your salary or hourly wage. But uh, remember that you're going to be spending a lot of your adult years working, and it's okay to take breaks to experience the rest of life. But also, it's just good mental health for yourself, too. If you just work nonstop too early in your career, you're going to burn out and you're not going to make it all the way through. Or you might end your career in the atmospheric sciences earlier than you wanted to because of that burnout situation.
What advice would you give your younger self starting out in this field?
I think to be ready for some bumps on the road, and it's okay that things are not going to work out. I think I kind of grew up uh, in K through 12 and undergrad kind of as a perfectionist person, expecting everything to work out. I'd been fortunate that things had just kind of worked out pretty smoothly on the academic side up to grad school in my career, and it just being okay with the fact that things are not going to work out. There are going to be some tough moments, and that what you think is a big deal when things don't go right is probably not a big deal to most other people. You just got to learn from mistakes or things that don't go well and try again, and it's going to be okay. And also, too, that the amount of stress that you put into grad school, at the end of the day, what you remember more are the things that worked well and the positive experiences, and a lot of things that stress you out, they'll become faded memories that don't even really bother you too much as you move forward. So, assuming that, you're able to get through the program start to finish.
So, going to know what I call my silly questions. What's your go to restaurant in town?
That's a good question. It's become, Atlanta is loaded. It's a big city. It's loaded with restaurants. There are three that my family and I like to go to. I'll just highlight one of them. It's called Taqueria del Sol. There's a few different locations in town, and it's just a very simple one page menu. They have a couple different types of tacos, including they have one like taco of the day. They have like a dish of the day, and then they have some other items too, sort of Mexican themed food. And I just absolutely love that place because they have amazing chips and queso. They have their tacos of the day are always incredible. I like spicy food, and they always have really spicy tacos. And for me, I'm a frugal person, so it's affordable in a world where things are becoming sort of less affordable right now. There are prices that I can handle, and for me, I'm always big into like the chips and queso situation when eating tacos or some other big meal next to that. So that's a favorite for us here.
What do you like to do with your free time?
I like to go jogging a lot. It's been interesting jogging here in Atlanta the last few years after growing up in Wisconsin. Because in Wisconsin, I remember having lots of warm clothes to go jogging in the winter. I even had yak tracks I'd put on my shoes for running on ice and snow conditions, and I do miss running like that. But the plus side here is that it's warm enough all 4 seasons that even in the winter, I mean, there are some January, February days I've run here where I'm in shorts and a t-shirt and I've been totally warm enough. And that for me, that's still a wild concept spending most of my life in Wisconsin before coming here. Being said, the reverse is in the summer. It is so hot and humid here. And I see people at like 4 o'clock, it'll be like 90 something out, dew points in the low 70s, and they're running in like jogging pants and long sleeves. I don't understand how that is enjoyable. And that will not be for me, but more power to them for being able to do that. I also like to do trivia, different restaurants and bars with friends in town, play some ultimate frisbee. And I really just enjoy spending time with my kids. It's been fun watching them grow up and experiencing the different fun things to do with families in the city area. Like even things as simple as just riding the train around. Our kids just love being on the train because it feels so special to be in a big city surrounded by tall skyscrapers and people from all over the world. It's been a really special experience.
Is there something a touring student shouldn't miss while visiting?
Yeah, so the really cool thing about Georgia Tech's campus is that it's located in Midtown, and it's about a mile or two north of downtown. So for anyone who's listening that's been to a past AMS annual meeting in Atlanta, usually that conference was at the World Congress Center downtown. But if you go a little bit north, that's actually where Georgia Tech's campus is. Campus is really beautiful here. I especially encourage anyone to visit in the spring when everything's blooming. It is fantastic. The weather's perfect. There's just flowers blooming everywhere, and it's just beautiful outside. But when you're in the campus area, a lot of the buildings are very like tech looking because it's a tech school. So a lot of the modern buildings are very like rectangular, prismy, and there's a lot of like computer science engineering stuff around. There's a building that just houses a car that's called the Ramblin' Wreck. And it's literally a car they drive out during like football games that are around campus. It's this like old school, like early mid like 20th century car that's kind of fun. I was fortunate enough to have one ride in it once. So it was kind of fun zipping around campus in that thing. But then if you're in Atlanta, there's a lot of restaurants to check out. If you like sports, downtown often has major sporting events, big concerts like Taylor Swift's been here a ton of times. When Beyonce comes to town, I mean, it's impossible to drive downtown because she brings in fans from all over the world. There's other famous people I could probably go on forever. But there's also like a really amazing botanical garden in town. That's one of my favorite places to go. Very kid friendly. They do an amazing holiday light show. The zoo is pretty cool as well too. Other things like the aquarium downtown has some unbelievable species, ocean marine species that live there, that are in the tanks there. And then I think just like the city is just full of parks and trees. It's for not having any like major inland lakes or being by the coast. It's very vegetative and it's a very beautiful city to drive around when things are in bloom.
This one might be controversial, but which weather phenomenon do you think has the best personality?
Well, that's a good question. I feel like the answer might depend on what my mood is in a given day. I mean, this might sound kind of like boring or cheesy, but I mean, the sun when it's out and it's clear, everyone's very cheery and happy, and it makes me feel cheery, happy, optimistic as well too. But I think like a good like mesoscale convective system has kind of an interesting mixed personality because I feel like it's just like someone who's like kind of just building up that like vented is like kind of venting up like this built up anger. And, with a multi-cell thunderstorm, you get some nice outflow from that. But then you get like the gust front. It's just like all the frustrations being let out, like forward facing, like someone yelling or screaming, like just letting it all out. And if you're kind of experiencing the front edge of that, you just kind of get blown over, like heavy rain. Sometimes you might get like a gust tornado or something like that on the front line. So I think it's kind of got all these different emotions mixed in. And at the end of the day, it's all these stratus clouds and it's just kind of like calming down and then hoping the sun comes out later and things kind of clear out.
What's the weirdest place you've checked the weather from?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if this is a weird place, but it's kind of a interesting story. So about I would say this is like 11 summers ago or now. I went to a music festival called the Eau Claire's Festival, and it was run by, if anyone knows Justin Vernon, who is with the band Bon Iver. He's got some other groups as well too. It was the first year he put together a music festival, and everyone in Wisconsin, when anyone in Wisconsin becomes famous, everyone like latches onto that person and wants to be part of it because it's kind of a small, tight community within the state. So I remember camping there, and the internet was not very good. Like smartphones were still kind of in their early infancy stages. And I remember trying to go to sleep in a tent because the next day was like the start of the music festival, and we're all outside. There's no tree coverage or anything like that. And my cousin woke me up at like 12 or 1 in the morning or something. And he's like, Zach, you gotta like you love weather. Like look at this lightning in the sky, and it was like everything was lighting up. Like it looked cool, but it was like oh something's coming. And the internet wasn't working well, but I was able to pull up like just the radar loop from like weather.gov locally where we were at. And this massive squall line or like QLCS was about to come through. And there was like severe thunderstorm warnings like on the whole line, like watch out for like a big gust front. And we were just kind of like, we need to like find a building right now and like get out of this. And I remember we got up and we tried to find somewhere to go, but there's like no buildings anywhere. It's all tent camping. But eventually the storm blew through. We found one little shelter we were able to kind of hide in. And when we got back, people's tents were blown all over the place. So I remember my wife and I, at the time we weren't married yet, but we were borrowing my dad's car, and it was a fairly new car, and he told us not to like damage it wherever we go with it. And of course, this like pitch tent slammed into the car and it like broke the windshield a little bit. And someone came running across the field like that's my tent from like 100 yards away or something like that. It got picked up and blown into the car, and it was kind of a mess picking everything up. But it was as a weather person, it was a very memorable experience. So it was pretty wild.
What's the worst clothing choice you've made for bad weather?
I think the most common mistake I make, and this is definitely a thing since I've been in Atlanta, is that in the summertime, I just don't walk around with an umbrella a lot. And every once in a while, we get these popcorn thunderstorms right over us. And I'll get caught like walking back to the car. And so it's not necessarily that the clothes are a bad choice, but it's just not coming prepared with an umbrella and just getting absolutely soaked walking across campus or going to a car. And it's kind of funny because it happens to people all the time here. Like they think they're safe. And then there's that one little pop-up thunderstorm that hits right over campus and nowhere else. And you just get absolutely soaked. And you see people like coming into class or to their research offices like drenched. But then if you go outside, 10 minutes before or after, it's sunny again and the same people are totally fine. So it's more of a bad choice with the proper weather equipment versus the clothing itself.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before we end this episode?
I think that, if anyone is ever interested in an academic path, feel free to email me or find me on the internet. Let me know if you ever want to talk career stuff, especially if it comes to like grad school, applying for jobs post grad school. But if anyone's ever just interested in talking weather or wants to network, you're always welcome to reach out to me. I always love meeting new people, especially younger meteorologists that are up and rising. If you're just looking for someone to network with and make connections, you're always welcome to talk to me. You can set up a virtual call or phone call, or if you're ever in the area on campus, yeah, come contact me. You can feel free to have a tour of the department, can show you around campus a little bit. It's a pretty great spot to visit.
So, how can students reach you?
They can email me. I guess my email, if you just search for me, like on Georgia Tech's website, there's a directory or there's a web page. My email, I'll just say it out loud. It's Zachary.Handlos at eas.gatech.edu. But again, if you search for me on the internet, you'll probably find that somewhere. I have an office phone number, but I don't have a phone that it rings to. I just get automatic voicemail to my email. So maybe just send an email. Don't try that. Yeah, and I think that'll work best. Otherwise, if you see me at a conference, if you recognize my face or my voice, I suppose, since it's just an audio recording, or see my name somewhere, come find me. Be happy to say hi.
All right. Thank you so much for being on with us today.
Yeah, thanks for this opportunity.
You've been listening to Weather You. I'm your host, Kelly Thrower. Every episode, we explore a different corner of the atmospheric sciences and the amazing people who study our skies. If you liked what you heard today, hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment, and let us know what you think. And if you want to share your own story or see your school featured in a future episode, we'd love to hear from you. Just send us a DM on Instagram at whetheryoupodcast or email at whetheryoupodcast@outlook.com. The podcast is just as much your journey as it is mine, and I'm so glad you're along for the ride. That's today's Outlook, and I'll catch you next time.